My husband abandoned me in a dangerous neighborhood on our anniversary. You're nothing without me. The acrid smell of burning rubber assaulted my nostrils as Mike's taillights disappeared into the darkness. I stood there stunned, my heart pounding in my chest. How could he do this to me, his own wife, left stranded in the middle of nowhere? Mike, I screamed, my voice echoing off the abandoned buildings surrounding me. Mike, come back. But he was gone, leaving me alone in this godforsaken part of town. I hyped myself, trying to ward off the chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. The argument we had in the car played on repeat in my mind. You're useless, Jess, Mike had sneered, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Can't even keep the house clean. What kind of wife are you? I'm doing my best, I protested, fighting back tears. Your mother. Don't you dare bring my mother into this, he roared, slamming on the brakes. Get out now. I thought he was joking, he couldn't be serious. But the look in his eyes told me otherwise. Cold, cruel, unfeeling. Now, as I stood on the cracked sidewalk, I realized just how far from home I was. My purse was still in the car, along with my phone. I had nothing but the clothes on my back and the growing realization that my marriage was falling apart. A group of rough-looking men loitered on the corner, eyeing me with interest. I quickened my pace, searching desperately for a safe place. A diner, maybe, or a gas station, somewhere I could call for help. Hey lady, one of the men called out. You lost? I ignored him, walking faster. My heart raced as I heard footsteps behind me. I'm talking to you, sweetheart. The voice growled closer now. Just as panic threatened to overwhelm me, I spotted a neon sign flickering in the distance, salvation in the form of a 24-hour diner. I broke into a run, pushing through the door with a jingle of bells. The waitress behind the counter looked up, startled by my abrupt entrance. You okay, hon? I shook my head, fighting back tears. Can I use your phone, please? She nodded, gesturing to an ancient payphone in the corner. I fumbled with the receiver, trying to remember Chloe Wilson's number. My fingers shook as I dialed. Hello. Chloe Wilson's sleepy voice answered on the third ring. Chloe Wilson, I choked out. It's Jess. I need help. Jess, what's wrong? Where are you? I glanced around, searching for a street sign. I don't know. Some diner on the east side. Mike, he left me here. He what? Chloe Wilson's voice sharpened, sleep forgotten. That bastard. Okay, don't move. I'm coming to get you. What's the name of the diner? I relayed the information, clinging to the phone like a lifeline. Chloe Wilson, I don't know what to do. Things have gotten so bad. We'll figure it out, she assured me. Just stay put. I'll be there in 20 minutes. As I hung up, I caught my reflection in the grimy mirror above the payphone. I hardly recognized the woman staring back at me. Pale, frightened. A far cry from the confident, independent person I'd been before marrying Mike. The waitress approached, concern etched on her weathered face. Sugar, you want some coffee while you wait? On the house. I nodded gratefully, following her to a booth. As I sipped the bitter brew, my mind wandered to happier times. My job at the art gallery, my cozy apartment, friends who supported me. When had I lost all that? The answer came unbidden. The day I said I do to Michael Davis. The bell of the door jingled, and I tensed, fearing Mike had returned. But it was only a tired-looking trucker heading straight for the counter. I checked my watch. 15 more minutes until Chloe Wilson arrived. 15 minutes to decide what I was going to do next. Because one thing was certain, I couldn't go back to the way things were. As I waited, I made a silent vow to myself. This night, this humiliation would be the last. Whatever it took, I would reclaim the woman I used to be. And Mike? Mike would regret the day he left me standing alone in the dark. I stumbled through the front door, exhausted from the night's ordeal. Chloe Wilson had driven me home, insisting I call the police. But what would I say? That my husband had abandoned me in a dangerous part of town. I could already hear the skepticism in their voices. There you are. A shrill voice pierced the air. Where have you been? Michael's been worried sick. I froze, my hands still on the doorknob. Emily White, my mother-in-law, stood in the hallway, arms crossed and lips pursed in disapproval. Behind her, Mike lounged on the couch, looking anything but worried. I said, forcing a smile I didn't feel. I didn't expect you to be here. Well, someone had to be here for Michael, she sniffed. Since his wife couldn't be bothered. I bit back a retort, reminding myself that Em didn't know the whole story. Or did she? The way Mike smirked from the couch made me wonder if he'd already spun some tale to make me look like the villain. I'm sorry for worrying you, I said, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. There was a misunderstanding. Em waved her hand dismissively. Never mind that now. The house is a mess, Jessica. I've been trying to tidy up, but my poor back. I glanced around the immaculate living room, then back at Em's martyred expression. I'll take care of it, I said, resigned, as I moved towards the kitchen. Mike finally spoke. Bring me a beer, would you, babe? I clenched my fists, remembering his taillights disappearing into the night. But Em was watching, her beady eyes missing nothing. I forced a nod and continued to the kitchen. The moment I was alone, I sat against the counter, fighting back tears. How had my life come to this? Catering to a man who'd left me stranded and a woman who seemed to delight in my misery. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Chloe Wilson checking in. I typed a quick response, assuring her I was okay. But was I really? Jessica. Em's voice rang out. Where's Michael's beer? I grabbed a can from the fridge and returned, turning to the living room. Mike took it without a word of thanks while Em tutted about the state of the coffee table. Really, Jessica, she said, running a finger along the spotless surface. I don't know how you expect to keep a husband if you can't even keep a tidy home. I work full-time, Em. I reminded her, my emience wearing thin, and I do my best to. Excuses, she interrupted. In my day, women knew how to balance work and home. Isn't that right, Michael? Mike grunted in agreement, his eyes never leaving the TV. I felt something snap inside me. You know what? I said, my voice shaking. I'm done. I'm going to bed. Em gasped as if I'd slapped her. But the dishes, and Michael needs his dinner. I turned to Mike, who finally deigned to look at me. You left me alone in a dangerous neighborhood, I said, my voice low and dangerous. You can make your own damn dinner with that. I stormed upstairs, ignoring Em's sputtering protests. I slammed the bedroom door behind me, my heart racing. What had I done? My phone buzzed again. Another message from Chloe Wilson. You okay? Need me to come over? I hesitated, then typed back. No. But can we meet for lunch tomorrow? I need to talk. Her response was immediate. Absolutely. Usual place at 12:30. I agreed, then sank onto the bed, my mind whirling. Something had to change. I couldn't keep living like this, walking on eggshells in my own home. A soft knock at the door made me jump. Jess, it was Mike, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. Can we talk? I stared at the door, torn between hope and suspicion. Was this a peace offering or just another manipulation? With a deep breath, I stood up. Whatever happened next. One thing was clear, things couldn't go on as they had been. It was time to take a stand. The alarm blared, jolting me awake. Another day in paradise, I thought bitterly. Mike's side of the bed was cold. He hadn't come up last night after our confrontation. Part of me was relieved, but another part ached for the man I'd fallen in love with years ago. I dragged myself out of bed, dreading the day ahead. As I stepped into the hallway, Em's voice drifted up from downstairs. Michael, darling, you really should talk to Jessica about her behavior. It's simply unacceptable. I froze, straining to hear Mike's response. I know, Mom. I'll handle it. My stomach churned. Handle it? Like he'd handled leaving me stranded in a dangerous neighborhood. I showered and dressed quickly, determined to leave before facing either of them. But as I reached for my car keys, Mike appeared in the doorway. Where do you think you're going? He asked, his voice deceptively calm. Work, I replied, trying to sidestep him. He blocked my M. We need to talk about last night. I'm going to be late, I insisted, my heart racing. I don't care, he growled, grabbing my arm. You embarrassed me in front of my mother. You're not leaving until we sort this out. I yanked my arm free, anger overriding fear. Sort what out, Mike? How you abandoned me or how your mother treats me like a servant? His face darkened. Watch your tone, Mom's just trying to help. Help? I laughed bitterly. Is that what you call it? Before Mike could respond, Em appeared behind him. Oh good, you're both here, Jessica. I've made a list of chores that need doing today. I stared at her, incredulous. Em, I have to go to work. She waved dismissively. Surely your little job can wait. Family comes first. After all, my little job pays half the bills around here. I snapped. Em gasped, clutching her chest dramatically. Michael, you hear how she speaks to me? Mike's expression hardened. Apologize to my mother now. I looked between them, suddenly seeing clearly for the first time. This was my life now, caught between a manipulative mother-in-law and a husband who'd rather side with her than stand up for his wife. No, I said quietly. What did you say? Mike's voice was dangerously low. I straightened my spine, meeting his gaze. I said no. I'm done apologizing for existing. I'm done trying to please people who will never be satisfied. I'm going to work. I pushed past them both, ignoring M's theatrical sobs and Mike's angry calls. My hands shook as I started the car, but a strange calm settled over me as I pulled out of the driveway. At the office, Chloe Wilson took one look at my face and ushered me into the break room. Spill, she demanded, pushing a cup of coffee into my hands. I told her everything, the abandonment, M's constant criticism, Mike's indifference. With each word, the weight on my chest lightened. Jess, Chloe Wilson said gently when I finished. You know this isn't normal, right? What they're doing to you, it's abuse. I flinched at the word, but deep down I knew she was right. What am I supposed to do? I whispered. Leave, she said simply. You're strong, talented, and capable. You don't need them. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Mike. Come home now. We need to talk. I stared at the screen, my newfound resolve wavering. Then another message appeared. If you're not here in 30 minutes, don't bother coming back at all. Something snapped inside me. I looked up at Chloe Wilson, a plan forming in my mind. You're right, I said. I don't need them. But I'm not just going to leave. They need to understand what they've done. Chloe Wilson's eyes widened. What are you thinking? I smiled, feeling truly alive for the first time in years. I'm thinking it's time for a little payback. Are you with me? Chloe Wilson grinned, squeezing my hand. Always. What's the plan? As I began to outline my idea, a thrill of excitement ran through me. Mike and Em had no idea what was coming, but they were about to learn that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. I'd been walking on eggshells for days, waiting for the other shoe to drop after my confrontation with Mike and Em. But nothing happened. No angry outbursts, no passive-aggressive comments, just an eerie calm that set my nerves on edge. Then, out of the blue, Mike approached me one evening, a strange glint in his eye. Jess, I've been thinking, he said. We've been through a rough edge lately, but I want to make it up to you. I eyed him wearily. What do you mean? He smiled, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the man I'd fallen in love with. Our anniversary is coming up. I've got a surprise planned. A dinner show downtown, just the two of us. My heart skipped a beat. Could this be real? A chance to reconnect, to rebuild what we'd lost. That sounds wonderful, I said cautiously, not daring to hope. Mike's smile widened. Great, it's this Saturday. I'll pick you up at 7. As he walked away, I felt a flutter of excitement. Maybe things were finally turning around. Saturday arrived, and I spent hours getting ready, determined to make the most of this opportunity. When Mike's car pulled up, I hurried outside, only to stop short at the sight of Em in the passenger seat. Hello, Jessica, she chirped, her saccharine tone setting my teeth on edge. Michael invited me along. Isn't that thoughtful? I looked at Mike, who shrugged apologetically. Mom's been feeling down lately. I thought this might cheer her up. Swallowing my disappointment, I climbed into the back seat. So much for our romantic evening. The drive downtown was tense, filled with Em's incessant chatter and Mike's monosyllabic responses. I stared out the window, wondering how I'd ended up here. Suddenly, Mike pulled over in a rundown neighborhood. I need to make a quick stop, he announced. Jess, can you run into that store and grab some aspirin? My head's killing me. Before I could protest, Em chimed in. Oh yes, and while you're there, be a dear, pick up some mints. My breath feels atrocious. Sighing, I got out of the car and headed towards the dingy convenience store. As I pushed open the door, a bell jingled overhead, startling me. The clerk eyed me suspiciously as I wandered the aisles, searching for aspirin and mints. When I finally found them and approached the counter, I realized with horror that I'd left my purse in the car. I'm so sorry, I stammered. I need to run back to the car for my wallet. I'll be right back. But when I stepped outside, my blood ran cold. The street was empty. Mike's car was gone. Panic seized me as the reality of the situation sank in. They'd left me again, but this time, it wasn't just Mike. And had been in on it too. My hands shook as I reached for my phone, only to remember it was in my purse in the car with them. Tears of frustration and anger welled up as I looked around the unfamiliar, threatening neighborhood. How could they do this to me? And on our anniversary, no less. A group of men loitering nearby noticed my distress, nudging each other and grinning. Fear gripped me as they started moving in my direction. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I was done being a victim. Done letting Mike and M manipulate and abuse me. This ends now, I thought fiercely. I ducked back into the store, ignoring the clerk's annoyed look. Please, I begged. I need to use your phone. It's an emergency. He hesitated, then nodded towards an ancient payphone in the corner. I rushed over, my fingers trembling as I dialed the only number I knew by heart. Hello, Wilson, I said when she answered. I need your help, and I'm ready to do what we talked about. It's time to make them pay. As I waited for Chloe Wilson to arrive, a plan began to form in my mind. Mike and M thought they'd broken me, but they'd only succeeded in igniting a fire they couldn't control. They wanted to play games? Fine. But they were about to learn that I could play too, and I'd play to win. Chloe Wilson's car screeched to a halt in front of the convenience store. I rushed out, relief flooding through me at the sight of my best friend. Jess, oh my God. Chloe Wilson exclaimed, pulling me into a fierce hug. Are you okay? What happened? I quickly filled her in on Mike's deception and M's involvement. Chloe Wilson's face darkened with each word. That's it, she growled. We're not letting them get away with this anymore. As we sped towards the dinner show venue, I felt a surge of determination. Chloe Wilson, remember that plan we talked about? I think it's time. She glanced at me, a slow smile spreading across her face. You sure? I nodded, my resolve strengthening. They've pushed me too far this time. It ends tonight. We arrived at the upscale restaurant just as Mike and M were being seated. Through the window, I could see them laughing, probably congratulating themselves on their cruel prank. Ready? Chloe Wilson asked, squeezing my hand. I took a deep breath. Ready. We strode into the restaurant, heads held high. Mike's face paled when he saw me, while M's mouth dropped open in shock. Jess, Mike stammered. How did you surprise? Did you really think you could just abandon me and get away with it? I said coldly. Em recovered quickly, her voice dripping with fake concern. Jessica dear, there must be some misunderstanding. We were so worried when you didn't come back to the car. I laughed bitterly. Save it, Em. I know exactly what you two were up to. Mike stood up, his face thunderous. You're making a scene. Let's discuss this at home. Oh, we're way past that, Mike, I retorted. In fact, I think it's time everyone here knows exactly what kind of man you are. With that, Chloe Wilson stepped forward, producing a small device from her purse. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced to the now silent restaurant, we have a special presentation for you tonight. Before Mike or M could react, Chloe Wilson pressed a button, and a projection appeared on the restaurant's blank wall. It was footage from our home security cameras, scenes of Mike berating me, M's constant criticism, the emotional abuse I'd endured for years. Gasps echoed through the room as the truth of my life played out for all to see. You're worthless, Jess. You'd be nothing without me. Mike's cruel words filled the air. Really, Jessica? M's voice followed, dripping with venom. I don't know how you expect to keep a husband if you can't even keep a tidy home. I watched as the audience's expressions changed from shock to outrage. Some people were crying. Others looked ready to confront Mike and M themselves. Chloe Wilson's voice cut through the murmurs. This is the reality of emotional abuse, she said. It's silent, it's insidious, and it destroys lives. But tonight, we're breaking that silence. She gestured towards me, and suddenly all eyes in the room were on me. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, I'd like to introduce you to the real Jess Thompson. My legs felt like lead as I made my way to the stage. Mike stood up, his face contorted with rage. Jess, don't you dare. Sit down, Mr. Davis, a security guard warned, placing a hand on Mike's shoulder. As I reached the microphone, I took a deep breath. This was it. No turning back now. For years, I began, my voice shaking slightly, I've lived in fear. I've been belittled, manipulated, and made to feel worthless, but no more. I locked eyes with Mike, feeling a surge of strength. Mike Davis, I want you to hear this loud and clear. I am divorcing you. I am reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my freedom. The room erupted in applause. I saw M trying to drag Mike towards the exit, but security blocked their M. And Emily, I continued, my voice growing stronger, your days of manipulating and abusing me are over. You too thought you could break me, but you only made me stronger. As I spoke, I felt years of pain and anger pouring out of me. The audience hung on every word, their support palpable. Suddenly, Mike broke free from the security guard, charging towards the stage. You ungrateful, he roared. After everything I've done for you. Time seemed to slow down. I saw the fury in Mike's eyes, the desperation of a man losing control. For a moment, fear gripped me. Had I pushed too far? But before Mike could reach me, several audience members tackled him to the ground as security dragged him away, his screams echoing through the ballroom. I realized something profound. I wasn't afraid anymore. I turned back to the microphone, my voice steady and clear. To anyone out there suffering in silence, you are not alone. You are strong, and you deserve better. As the room erupted in a standing ovation, I felt tears streaming down my face. But for the first time in years, they were tears of relief, of freedom, of hope. Chloe Wilson rushed to my side, enveloping me in a fierce hug. You did it, Jess, she whispered. You're free. And as I looked out over the sea of supportive faces, I knew she was right. The battle wasn't over, there would be legal fights ahead, no doubt. But in that moment, I had won the war for my soul, and nothing would ever be the same again. The aftermath of my public declaration was chaos. Security guards struggled to restrain Mike as he thrashed and hurled obscenities. And shrill voice cut through the commotion. You ungrateful wretch. After everything we'd done for you. I stood my ground, my voice steady despite my racing heart. What you've done is abuse me, manipulate me, and try to break my spirit. But not anymore. As Mike was dragged towards the exit, he managed to break free momentarily, his eyes wild with rage, locked on mine. You think this is over? He snarled. I'll destroy you, Jess. You'll have nothing when I'm done with you. A chill ran down my spine, but I refused to show fear. Chloe Wilson stepped forward, placing herself between Mike and me. The only one who's finished here is you, Mike, she said coldly. Security finally managed to remove Mike and M from the ballroom, their angry shouts fading as they were escorted out of the building. The room buzzed with shocked murmurs and words of support. An older woman approached me, tears in her eyes. You're so brave, dear. I wish I'd had your courage years ago. Her words hit me hard. How many others had suffered in silence, like I had? Suddenly, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You'll regret this, Jess. Watch your back. I showed Chloe Wilson, my hands shaking. It's starting already, I whispered. She squeezed my shoulder. We knew this wouldn't be easy, but you're not alone anymore. As if on cue, a man in a crisp suit approached us. Mrs. Davis, he said. I'm James Harris, an attorney. I'd like to offer my services pro bono. What you've endured is unacceptable, and I want to help ensure you get the justice you deserve. Before I could respond, another voice chimed in. And I'm Olivia Clark from the Women's Crisis Center. We have resources to help you through this transition. Overwhelmed, I looked at Chloe Wilson, who nodded encouragingly. See, you have support now. As we made our way out of the ballroom, a crowd had gathered outside. News of what happened had spread quickly. Reporters shouted questions, camera flashes blinded me. Mrs. Davis, how long have you been suffering this abuse? Do you fear retaliation from your husband? What message do you have for other women in abusive relationships? I froze. The weight of the moment crushed down on me. This was more than I'd bargained for. What if I said the wrong thing? What if Mike used this against me? Chloe Wilson sensed my panic and stepped in. No comments at this time, please. Respect Mrs. Davis' privacy. As we pushed through the crowd, I spotted a familiar face, my old boss from the art gallery. Jess, she called out. If you need a job, there's always a place for you with us. Tears welled up in my eyes. After years of isolation, here was a lifeline to my old life, my true self. We finally made it to Chloe Wilson's car, shutting out the chaos outside. I slumped in the seat, exhausted and overwhelmed. What had I done, Chloe Wilson? I whispered. Mike's right. He'll try to destroy me. What if I lose everything? Chloe Wilson turned to me, her expression fierce. Listen to me, Jess. You've already won the most important battle. You've reclaimed your voice, your dignity, everything else. We'll face it together. As we drove away, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Mike. Hope you enjoyed your little show. That's see you in court. I stared at the message, a mix of fear and determination coursing through me. The road ahead would be hard, possibly dangerous. Mike wouldn't go down without a fight, and Aim would use every manipulative trick she knew. But as I looked at Chloe Wilson, thought of the supporters I'd gained tonight, I felt a spark of hope for the first time in years. I wasn't facing my battles alone. I took a deep breath, squaring my shoulders. Okay, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. What's our next move? Chloe Wilson grinned, a glint of determination in her eye. Now we fight back. And we win. As we sped into the night, I knew the war was far from over, but I was finally ready for battle. Mike and Em had no idea what was coming their way. The woman they tried to break was about to show them just how strong she really was. The courtroom buzzed with tension as I took my seat. Chloe Wilson's reassuring presence beside me. Across the aisle, Mike sat with his lawyer, his face a mask of cold fury. And wasn't far behind, her eyes narrowed in contempt. All rise, the bailiff called out as Judge Amanda Lewis entered. I felt a flutter of hope. She was known for her fair rulings in domestic cases. We're here today for the divorce proceedings of Jessica Thompson versus Michael Davis, Judge Lewis began. I understand there are some unusual circumstances surrounding this case. Mike's lawyer stood up, his voice dripping with false concern. Your Honor, my client has been the victim of a vicious smear campaign. Mrs. Lewy Davis' public spectacle was nothing more than attention-seeking behavior. I clenched my fists, anger rising in my chest. But before I could react, my lawyer, James Harris, was on his feet. Your Honor, we have extensive evidence of Mr. Davis' emotional abuse and manipulation, including security footage, text messages, and eyewitness accounts from the night Mrs. Davis bravely spoke out. As James presented the evidence, I watched Mike's face. His cool facade cracked, revealing the rage beneath, and shifted uncomfortably in her seat, no doubt realizing her role in the abuse was about to be exposed. When it was my turn to testify, I took a deep breath and approached the stand. Looking directly at Mike, I spoke clearly and firmly. For years, I lived in fear. I was belittled, manipulated, and made to feel worthless. But standing here today, I realized that the only worthless thing in my life was the way I was treated. I turned to the judge. Your Honor, I'm not just asking for a divorce. I'm asking for a chance to reclaim my life, my dignity, and my future. As I returned to my seat, I caught a glimpse of Em's face. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. The judge called a brief recess to review the evidence. Those minutes felt like hours, but when she returned, her expression was resolute. In light of the overwhelming evidence of emotional abuse and manipulation, she said, I'm granting the divorce in favor of Mrs. Thompson. Mr. Davis, you will pay alimony and cover Mrs. Thompson's legal fees. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order against both you and your mother, Emily White. Relief washed over me like a tidal wave. It was over. I was free. Mike exploded, leaping to his feet. You can't do this to me. As security restrained him, Em rushed forward. Jessica, please, we can work this out. We're family. I stood tall, meeting her gaze. No, Em. We're not family. Family doesn't treat each other the way you treated me. As Mike and Em were escorted out, their angry shouts fading, I turned to Chloe Wilson. Tears streamed down both our faces as we embraced. You did it, Jess, you whispered. You were free. Outside the courthouse, a small crowd had gathered. To my surprise, I saw familiar faces, my old co-workers from the art gallery, neighbors who had witnessed Mike's cruelty, even some of the people from the dinner show. My former boss stepped forward. Jesse said the job offer still stands. Whenever you're ready. Overwhelmed by the support, I could only nod gratefully. As Chloe Wilson and I made our way through the crowd, a young woman approached me hesitantly. Miss Thompson, she said, your story. It gave me the courage to leave my own abusive relationship. Thank you. In that moment, I realized that my pain hadn't been for nothing. By speaking out, I had potentially saved others from suffering the same fate. Weeks later, I stood in the doorway of my new apartment, boxes scattered around me. Chloe Wilson appeared behind me, grinning as she hefted another box. "Welcome home, roomie," she said. I smiled, taking in the space that was all mine, a symbol of my newfound freedom and independence. As we unpacked, my phone buzzed. Text from James. "Just heard Mike and Em left town. Looks like they couldn't handle the backlash." I showed Chloe Wilson. Both of us laughed in disbelief. It was really over. That night, as we sat on the balcony sharing a bottle of wine, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. I said, looking out at the city lights for the first time in a long time. "I'm excited about the future." Chloe Wilson clinked her glass against mine. "Here's to new beginnings, and to the amazing woman who fought for her freedom." As we toasted, I realized that while my journey had been painful, it had led me here to a place of strength, independence, and hope. Mike and Em had tried to break me, but in the end, they had only made me stronger. And as I looked towards the future, I knew that the best was yet to come.